Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do. But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long-snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys. Remember that guy. 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 They're just gonna remember some guys now.
That's the turn for the line. Cavendish is there. Mark Cavendish diving for the line, looking for number 35. Oh, a big crash. Mark Cavendish has taken the lead. Cavendish is coming to the line. It is win number 35. What a day for the rider from the Isle of Remember That Guy, the show we mine our memories for nugs and nostalgia about peripheral players past and present. Hey there, folks. Spiritually, I'm in France, but I guess not physically. Electronically, I'm with someone else.
Diaz, I'm glad to be on the other side of that electronic connection with you, James. But here's the thing. We do have a very special guest. It is a third electronic connection. Perhaps a fourth if we're to consider Craig as well. Craig would be the fourth because he's the third, and he's our very special guest.
Yeah, it's me, the guy who can't ride a bike on this podcast and is happy that James loves biking and cycling and all the people who do cycling.
The one thing I just want to say to your defense, Xavier, I wouldn't say that I can ride a bike. When you talk about proficiency in a foreign language, there's fluent and then there's proficient. I'm proficient at riding a bike. I wouldn't say I'm fluent at riding bikes. So one and a half of us can ride bikes.
I can't get on a bike and make it go forward, Diaz.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, that's a zero. That's what I'm saying.
I rented a bike in Ireland to go on a bike tour and realized after 10 seconds I did not know how to ride a bike.
One time at Temple, a girl say, yeah, no, I'll go on a date with you. I was like, hey, you want to go for a bike ride? She's like, totally. I don't have my own. So I was like, oh, cool. I'll just find someone else's for you to borrow. Turned out that was her way of saying she didn't know how to. But once the offer of me getting someone to lend one had entered, she didn't feel like she could say that until she was on the bike and crashed very quickly. People
That's
not
so
crashing.
Funny.
I had to not laugh. It took a lot in me to not laugh. It has been such a good tour. My goodness. Real quick, there's exactly one cycling thing that I know I've got your attention span for. So let's get one cycling thing in. Not the yellow jersey. I don't want to talk about GC. We know what happens when we talk about things going on. But the green jersey. The green jersey is the sprint one. And right now, it is being led on this day, July 8th, first rest day. It is currently being run by Binian or Bini Hirmai, who is from Eritrea. Eritrea has actually quite a rich cycling heritage. It is by far the number one cycling country in Africa. And back in 2015, the first Black African cyclists competed from Eritrea. Well, now the first one ever to win a tour stage has come along with Bini Hirmai, and he has really been the star of this tour, aside from the favorites that everyone expect to be kind of. He's the breakout star of this tour, and that is because he's also first person to win 2 stages on this Tour de France. That's a pretty sizable, at the time of recording this, green jersey lead. He's been just another fun guy to discover during this tour, and I've absolutely loved it. That is one of the things making memories for me right now.
Eritrea, very interesting place.
I mean, I got nothing else. I know that they're the number one cycling country in Africa. That's it.
Oh, the history of Eritrea is very interesting because for people who don't know, Ethiopia is essentially a federation of a bunch of different ethnic groups. Eritrea was originally part of that. Then they went to war to secede, and they've hated each other ever since, to the point where Eritrea has been led by the same dictator for about 30 years who makes everyone go in the army and stay there essentially forever so they can always defend against Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is now the largest landlocked country in the world and always wants access to the ocean. So there's always the threat that they're going to kill each other, and just 2 years ago there was another major war that killed a shit ton of people up there, where Eritrea actually invaded Ethiopia to kill a different Ethiopian group that Ethiopia also hated.
The risk of oversimplifying this sounds like an African and much more heavily militarized version of the Quebecois.
I was gonna say Basque Country too.
Sure. Same song, different verse. That cycling, that is one thing making memories for me. I didn't know I was going to have anything else until I had an appointment today. I was invited by a local museum director to do a little bit of I want to make it clear, incredibly light consulting. I am not being brought in for any real professional credentials here. But I was invited to come check out the Babe Ruth birthplace and museum by their director there. Did a little walkthrough, talking to him about some accessibility options there in their galleries, some visitor services stuff. And then at the end, he was like, hey, do you want to come in the vault? And that is because this used to also be Sports Legends Museum, meaning they have, a Babe Ruth collection and all of the Orioles collection and all of the Baltimore Colts collection and the Ravens collection and just a lot of other shit. I was like, yes, of course I want to go in the fucking vault. Boys, let me pull you out a list of some of the shit that I just saw today. None of this was things that I expected to see when I began my day. Let's start with the fact that this is the only building in the world with a World Series trophy and a Lombardi trophy under its roof. 1983 Commissioner's Trophy for the Birds, and then Super Bowl V, Baltimore Colts. Got to see Babe Ruth's 1917 business card. First ever business card for a baseball player, as far as they know. Fun fact, the thing that he has listed is that he's the ERA leader at the time, which is just delightful. Let's see what else.
Best pitcher in baseball, Babe Ruth.
Okay, so we saw a Hopkins Blue Jays lacrosse trophy from the undefeated season. I have held a Paralympic gold medal in my hands. Fancy cloth artifact holding gloves. Speaking of gloves, I've held a gold glove. Held one of Dave Vitale's gold gloves and the ball. They're just spray painted gold. Let's see, what else did we get? Carmelo Anthony's Syracuse ring. A 1983 Orioles ring. One of 2 Joe Flacco Super Bowl rings. Now, how are there 2, I hear you ask? I'm so glad that you asked. I'd be happy to tell you. Basically, the story is the Ravens made him wear both during some ceremonies and then said, okay, well, that one's yours now. And this one is also a quote-unquote Joe Flacco Super Bowl ring. So I've held that second one. So many jerseys. But last thing I'll leave with, I also got to see Johnny Unitas' initial contract with the Baltimore Colts. And I got to hear a story about it. First off, agents apparently laugh their asses off because this thing is 2 pages and contracts are like a book now. But they had Johnny Unitas' family come in to take a look. And one of Johnny Unitas' children, they see this contract, they take a look. They immediately laughed also because they recognized that that was definitely not Johnny Unitas' signature, but rather the way that their mother forged Johnny Unitas' signature when she needed to sign his name for anything. So we now know that Johnny Unitas did not sign his original Baltimore Colts contract. This is a fun fact that you have now learned. I remember that guy. Holy shit, it was so cool being there. I love being a museum professional. I knew this shit was going to pay off eventually, baby.
So can we lobby the NFL to say that Johnny Unitas' contract was void?
I think we're at statute of limitations. I don't know what an NFL statute...
I defer to Xavier.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no recourse that could happen. That's one of the things. A court can only take up something if there's an injured party who can be healed or mended by the court's decision. If a court says today Johnny Unitas' contract shouldn't have happened, they don't have the authority to take the Lombardi trophy from one team and give it to another.
However, right. I'm just going to say I would not put it past the Supreme Court. Xavier, speaking of the courts, what else is making memories for you right now?
Now, if you're going to speak of courts, you got to let Diaz go first because he's got some shit to say.
Ooh, let's hear it, baby.
Baby. Oh, baby. What a day it was yesterday as we record on Monday. Puerto Rico played host to Lithuania in one of several Olympic qualifying finals. So we saw Greece advance in one of those, Giannis taking Greece back to the Olympics. Very emotional at the end of it, but Puerto Rico playing host to Lithuania as a pretty strong underdog on the books. They were about an 8-9 point underdog on the books, mostly because Lithuania did have Domantas Sabonis as their star. Best player on Puerto Rico, Jose Alvarado. Great pesky little point guard, but certainly not a Domantas Sabonis, but it doesn't matter. Jose Alvarado looking like Puerto Rican Steph Curry. Tremont Waters, who is also Puerto Rican, which I learned during this tournament.
Love finding out in international tournaments. Oh, okay.
I love it. And it's like they're honestly clones of each other. And the way that they're playing for this Puerto Rican team, it's just two quick, tiny guards that were abusing the Lithuanian defense all afternoon. But that was how the offense was carried. And there was one player who I had never heard of before, who is now the unsung hero of this Puerto Rican national team. So I just want to very quickly talk about the man that held Domantas Sabonis to only 10 points on 5 of 9 shooting in that game. Ismael Romero, 33 years old, was born in Santa Clara, Cuba. So unlike Tremont Waters, Jose Alvarado, who were both American-born but of Puerto Rican descent, Ismael Romero, born in Cuba, at the age of 15, started playing for his local club. By the time he was 18, he made his debut in the Cuban Pro League. And by the time he was 19, he's playing for the Cuban national team. The 2012 Centro Basket is his first international tournament against Bahamas in the opening game. Plays 20 minutes, goes 3 of 5 from the field, puts up 6 points, 5 boards. They lose 81-68. After that game, he abandons the team. He seeks political asylum in Puerto Rico. It's granted. He enrolls at La Universidad de Turabo, where he plays for 4 years in La Liga Atlética Universitaria de Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has their own NCAA, folks. That's fascinating to learn. Plays 4 years there. Out of that, he gets drafted into the D League by Grand Rapids, the Denver affiliate. Plays 28 games, averages 6 and 5. Bounces all over the place after that. Plays a few years in Puerto Rico. Goes to the Mexican League. Goes to the Argentinian League. Goes to the Nicaraguan League before he finally lands back in Puerto Rico, where he is naturalized as a citizen in 2021. And he begins representing the Puerto Rican national team as their starting center. It culminates back in the same building where he played that game, defected, began his journey to, leaving Cuba, and it culminates in this incredible moment with this incredible victory against Lithuania. And I just at risk of just getting too romantic about it, I also need to say how incredible he played against Sabonis. There's a couple plays that I specifically wanted to note. He got a standing ovation for fronting him in the low post and denying the ball. I have never seen that before at basketball in any level. Just simply not letting Sabonis getting the ball got a standing ovation from this sellout crowd in Puerto Rico. He also forces 4 turnovers on Sabonis along the way. And the most incredible play of them all is one where he wasn't matched up on Sabonis. They actually went to his zone defense. And he comes over from the weak side and remember when LeBron stuffed Tiago Splitter in the finals?
Yes, I do. I remember that very vividly.
As do I, unfortunately. But that is exactly what Ismael Romero did to Domantas Sabonis. If there's one moment that is the microcosm of the entire game of what it was in that arena, it's that block and that moment. And look, in the box score, he only has that one block. He has 2 points. He has 4 rebounds. But if you only look at the stats, you are doing a disservice. If you watch that game, yes, Jose Alvarado, Tremont Waters, they deserve their flowers. But Ismael Romero, the man who defected from Cuba and returns back to that same place 12 years later to go to the Olympics, what an incredible story. And look, this is all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's an NBA level player, but if it's late season, Sixers need somebody to shore up that post defense, somebody off the bench. I think I know the guy for the job, and I think his name's Ismael Romero.
You're saying you know a guy with a little bit of perro in him.
He got a poquito perrito in him.
Poquito de perro.
But no, it was all the scenes from that game. Jose Alvarado tossing the game ball to Carlos Arroyo right at the final buzzer. Carlos Arroyo, who obviously led that famous upset over USA in 2004. Like,
We
that's
should
the
say
last time
Hall
Puerto
of
Rico,
Guy inductee Carlos Arroyo. We should give him
and
his
Hall
full
of Guy.
honorific. Yeah.
And of course, Hall of Guy inductee Carlos Arroyo. Just an incredible moment in the history of Puerto Rican sports. And to see it come full circle like that, because Arroyo is the GM of this Puerto Rican national team. So he put the team together, and Alvarado, carrying that fabled torch that was once passed to JJ Barea, and now it is his mantle to be the supremely underrated, pesky Puerto Rican point guard. And look, Puerto Rico's in that group with USA.
Hey, if there's anyone who knows how to architect an upset over the United States for Puerto Rico, it's GM Carlos Arroyo.
It's gonna be like South Sudan. Every team's gonna beat South Sudan in that group. It's USA, Puerto Rico, Serbia, South Sudan. So I'm sorry, South Sudan. You're gonna have a bad time in all three of your games. You just are.
Cover once. Just cover once.
Good teams win, great teams cover. And that Puerto Rico-Serbia game is like, Puerto Rico-USA is the one to romanticize. Puerto Rico-Serbia, I mean, that's if Puerto Rico wins that, Puerto Rico's likely through. If Puerto Rico loses that, they're likely not. And Serbia will be favorites, just as Lithuania was. But I'm pretty sure Jokic is not playing for Serbia. If Jokic is playing, that's gonna, if Romero shuts down Jokic, come on, folks.
He's on their preliminary roster, but there's no decision on whether he's actually going to play.
You know what? I'm going to lay it down. We want Jokic on that team because we want him to experience the defensive hell that is being guarded by Ismael Romero.
Well, continuing with the theme of undersized, pesky Puerto Ricans, Xavier, now can I hear what's making memories for you?
Well, to be honest, there's not really much that's making memories for me. And if I understand it correctly, the Olympics is going to play a role in our discussion today. So I think it just makes a little more sense to let Diaz take this away again.
I do appreciate, again, Xavier, you in the vein of the pesky Puerto Rican point guards, a great pass right back to me. I'll see if I can finish this off for you. The 2024 Paris Games are right around the corner. And yeah, we're talking about Olympics. We're talking about Olympic qualifiers. And in the spirit of that, we are looking at this as a great opportunity to look at some of the guys of some of the sports that we haven't discussed that we will have the opportunity to watch in these Olympics. So our category this week is guys from Olympic sports that we haven't talked about yet. For me, it was very easy to know what the sport was that I wanted to talk about because I love handball. For the uninitiated, the best way to describe it is think of futsal, like that indoor football game, but with basketball rules for maneuvering up and down the court. You have 3 steps before you can dribble, and then you get 3 more after you pick up your dribble, but mostly it's a passing game to be able to create advantages. The only person that is allowed to use their feet is the goalie. There's a crease that you have to shoot from outside of. That's kind of the basics of the sport. We used to play it in gym class back in high school. It was always our favorite sport to play in gym. We had the intramural team when we were back in college. By far my favorite sport that we ever played. It's kind of shocking to me that it's never really caught on in the U.S. in the way that you would think that it would. It's a very high-paced, high-scoring game, but it has been since the 88 games in Seoul that a U.S. men team is qualified, other than the 96 games in Atlanta, where you're the host, you get to play. And for the women, it's been since Barcelona in 92. So it's really not caught on kind of at all in America. But if we want to look at where it is very successful, it's for France, actually, the hosts in 2024. France has won 3 of the last 4 golds on the men's side, as well as the last gold on the women's side. So with home field advantage coming into 2024, you got to figure they're both favorites. But on the men's side, yes, 3 of the last 4 golds. But There were those 2016 games where France did not win and was an upstart team from Denmark that claimed their first gold. We want to celebrate that team. We want to celebrate the MVP of that team, arguably the GOAT of handball, Mikkel Hansen.
That sounds like a guy who'd be good at handball. When you say handball, that's kind of just what I pictured.
Mikkel Hansen, well...
Is he 6'2" with blonde hair and blue eyes?
So you're not that far off. He's 6'4" with long blonde hair and blue eyes.
Okay,
He's a Viking with hand in the name. He was born to do this.
No one ever remembers the Danish were the first Vikings, and it just came from Denmark and then to the Scandinavian countries.
Well, I mean, along those lines, I think that the town that he hails from kind of sounds like a Viking town because he's born in Helsingør, Denmark. I mean, come on. That's a Viking town. Born October 22nd, 1987 in Helsingør, Denmark. And notably, he is the son of Flemming Hansen. At this time, at the time of Mikkel's birth, Flemming is considered the GOAT of Danish handball, at least. He led the Danish league in scoring 6 years in a row from 1971 to 1976. He also led the Danish national team into the 72 Olympics, which was the first time that the modern handball was played at the Olympic Games. He scored 27 goals in 5 games for them in 72, and he would lead Denmark back to the Olympics in each of 76, 80, and 84, scoring 240 goals in 120 games along the way.
2 goals a game is good, I assume. That sounds pretty good.
2 goals a game is like a solid, like over the course of his career.
5 goals a game there at the peak.
Right, yeah, but like I would guess like a league leading average per game is going to be about 5 to 6. 2 is like a solid player, but again, you need to factor he played for the national team for 16 years, obviously going up and down in terms of the role that he was playing. But yeah, at his peak, best player in the country, led the domestic league in goals 6 years in a row at his height. So from the very beginning, at least in terms of the interest in the Danish handball world, there's kind of a LeBron-Bronny situation going on here. And it's also important to understand in Denmark is handball is far and away the number 2 sport. Like soccer is still number 1. There's no arguing that. Would never try to argue otherwise. But handball is their number 2 sport by a good margin. So there's a lot of interest in following young Michael's career. But the thing that makes him a little different than Bronny, from a very young age, he's already very dominant on the field. Versus, we're not trying to squint our eyes and see, do we have a good handball? No, Mikkel Hansen is very immediately dominant. The one thing that coaches hail about him from a young age as well is that even as a teenager, when he was on the U18, he was such a hard worker that by the time he's 16, he's already called up to the senior team and playing for GOG Handball. After being called up at 16, by the time he's 18 in 2005, he leads them to the Danish national title. And at the age of 20 in 2007, he leads them to another title. Just to describe Mikkel Hansen, the player, and what makes him so special and dominant in this game. Handball players are larger than the average person. Like, I would say the average height's probably about 6'1", 6'2". They're probably about 200 to 210. But Mikkel Hansen dwarfs these people when he's out on the court. He is standing at 6'4", and when you see him on the court, he looks more like a rugby player than a handball player. Like, he is bulky. He also has a good vertical, which the way that commentators describe it, with him having that added element of verticality, it allows him to play in the space that doesn't exist. He's playing at a higher level.
It's over top people
than anybody else is able to. Exactly. Yeah, like it's a game with taller people, and he is still taller than them and physically dominant enough to basically get to the space that he wants shoot over you if you're still in the way. But even with that size, if you're watching a highlight reel of Mikkel Hansen, you're also going to see the same kind of no look and wraparound passes that you'll see from, say, a guy like Nikola Jokic in the NBA. Very creative, no looking, and finding the open space. The craziest thing to see is the amount of spin that he'll put on some of his shots and some of his passes. So there's one particular highlight of him where he's basically in the left corner. He doesn't have an angle whatsoever for goal, but he jumps, he gets the goalie to commit out, and he throws it like way wide of the goal, but with side spin on it and slow enough that it then just bounces, catches the spin, goes like dead center of the goal. Couldn't have been more perfect.
Have they had their like spider tack controversy yet in the world of handball? Have we had a sticky stuff problem?
There's no sticky stuff that I've heard of in my research, which is all very natural, very fun, and very dominant play from Mikkel Hansen. In 2007, after he won that second title with GOG, he makes his debut for the national team and quickly asserts himself as the top alpha dog on that team as well. He scored 7 goals in a 34-33 win over Sweden for his international debut. 2008 is setting up as a very big year for Mikkel. First off, he makes the decision to leave his childhood club. He signs with FC Barcelona. But before he's going to make his debut for Barcelona, he's first going to compete in Olympic qualifiers to try to get the Danish team back to the Olympics for the first time since 1984, the last time that his father played for the team. Ultimately, ends up being no drama whatsoever. They qualify very easy for the Olympics. It's the first time in 24 years that they've been there. The format is very similar to how soccer or basketball will do theirs, where you start with the group stage, you do round robin, and then from there you go to the knockout rounds. On the last day of the group stage, Denmark is playing Russia, and it's very simple. Winner will go to the quarterfinal knockouts. 24 all as we are approaching the end of regulation. It's 2 30-minute halves, so it's 59-58. It's 59-59. The ball gets to Mikkel, and he's fouled as he's shooting. This creates basically not a penalty shot, but a free kick equivalent. And same thing as you'll kind of see in soccer. The defense is able to set up their wall.
Are they also all covering
He has
angles?
No, so they're actually reaching straight up. Like, props to them.
So they're ready to take it. Okay, hell yeah.
So it's volleyball style defending. Make yourself as big as possible. Face and balls be damned.
Well, also, I mean, for you to take it in that area, it would have to be very deliberate and intentional and not trying to score the goal.
It would have to be longest yard rules. You're trying to get them to call the game fair, so you're intentionally drilling them right in the balls.
It would be an instant fight. Like, that's one thing that I'm sure of. But I'm going to send you guys this video because what I've set the stage for is perhaps the most historic goal in the history of Denmark with basically no angle. He has one tiny little window that if he can absolutely snipe the top right corner, maybe he can get it in. With the last throw of the game, by God, he does it.
Det lukket nu. Kom så Hansen.
We'll post this video in the Discord when the episode comes out as well. But there's a video made by a Danish superfan. He shows the highlight and then does like a 3D rendering that shows like, hey, this is how physically impossible this shot was. Like, this is the margin of error. The animation isn't good, but the enthusiasm with which it is made is very good.
I'm glad the infographic part exists of it, because I'll be honest, just watching that if it was just that first clip, that was kind of cool, but it looks pretty normal. You can't really tell, like the same way that when you're watching a soccer game and for a free kick, they pan down to field view, you can actually see what the player is looking at when they line up for the free kick. And you're like, oh, they cannot see over any of these people. They are picking a spot and trying to curve it into that spot without being able to actually tell where it's going. And it looks much more impressive than the sky view we have where it's like, what? You couldn't see that wide open pass? What the fuck is wrong with you? And it's like, oh, wait, that is not what it looks like to them.
Yeah, it really helps to put it in perspective. With that incredible shot, with that incredible goal, Denmark advances to the knockout rounds, and they are swiftly bounced out by Croatia 26-24. But still, an incredible achievement for this Denmark team to get back on the international stage. Then after that, Mikkel reports to FC Barcelona, plays 2 years there, and then he comes back home to Denmark to play for Copenhagen. They win 2 titles in 2 years, and then the team folds entirely. This now brings us to 2012. This brings us to the European Championship, where Denmark wins gold, which sets them up as now a favorite entering into the 2012 London Games. Can they get the first gold in history? They do make it out of the group, but they lose again in the knockout stage, 24-22. And this is starting to speak to a trend that is kind of following Mikkel Hansen throughout his career. He's able to win the national titles, the league titles, but every year his team makes it to the Champions League. They're not able to get a Champions League title. When he makes it into the Olympics, he's not able to lead his team to victory and to gold there. So there is kind of the narrative that as great as Mikkel Hansen is, does he have it in him to be a champion? Can he win those same kind of narratives that we always hear? After his club folds, he has the decision. PSG is starting their handball team for the first time, and PSG has a lot of money.
So you're saying he's essentially Neymar at this point. He's handball Neymar.
It's all the same clubs every time.
Is he in Saudi Arabia right now? Is he in Saudi Arabia right now, Diaz?
I promise he does not ever play in Saudi Arabia. That I can promise.
Does he play in the Middle East, though? You very specifically said Saudi Arabia.
No oil money other than the oil money that PSG was bought with. That's the only oil money.
Which is very specifically oil money.
But he doesn't know it's oil money.
It's been laundered. There's a middleman.
There is at least a middleman. And the middleman in this case wanted to settle the debate of who is the greatest player in handball. Is it Mikkel Hansen or is it the Frenchman, Nikola Karaptich? The way that he sought to end this debate is why not just have them both be on our team? So the newly formed PSG signs the 2 best players in the world. Karaptich, the best player on those French teams that had won gold at the 2008 and 2012 games. They stay together for 10 years for PSG, and they win the French league every year. But as I said, those Champions League struggles, they very famously struggle in the Champions League. I'm not going to build up to it. I'm just going to say they never win the Champions League.
So it's just PSG again. PSG had the same issue in soccer and in handball. They spend so much money, they dominate their league, but never win the Champions League, so no one cares about their achievements, and it's all fake.
Insert body part here, ball. Same thing will happen to PSG there. They make a new chess ball, same thing will happen.
Yeah, what would be like elbow ball? Do you think elbow ball could be a thing soon?
Does PSG have a basketball team?
They have to, right?
No. The PSG does not have a basketball team. You would think that that'd be something that they would do, but maybe they've spent so much money on everything else not working out.
You would think, like, as they became aware of the existence of Wemby, they would have been like, oh, we'll start one now and get him to come play for us.
They give 35-year-old Wemby $100 million a season.
I would love to see that.
Euros.
Yeah, 100 million. Yeah, exactly. Or francs?
Francs?
Is the franc still in currency? Who knows?
Oh yeah, the only Paris team is Paris basketball, created by the director of the Minnesota Timberwolves, because the NBA wanted a basketball team in Paris.
Sounds right up Adam Silver's alley. I'm not surprised by that one bit. But yes, this PSG handball team as well has the similar vexing as the football team. The only time they make it to the final is 2016-17, and they lose that. But I am happy to report we have 4 third-place championships for PSG with this duo. Quite an impressive resume. 2016 Denmark handball is again in the Olympics. This time they're coming in as an underdog, largely on the back of this narrative that is formed around Mikkel Hansen as, frankly, a choker. Very narrowly avoids embarrassment in the group stage. They go 3-2 in the group stage. They lose to France 33-30 on the final day, which put them in danger of not making it out. But other games went the way that they needed them to go. They do make it out. On the path in the quarterfinal against Slovenia, Mikkel Hansen scores 8 in a 37-30 win. In the semifinal against Poland, they go to extra time. Mikkel Hansen scores 10 en route to a 29-28 victory to advance them to the final. He puts up 8. Nikola Karabtic only scores 5, and Denmark claims that first gold at the Olympics in 2016 with the upset victory over France.
Once again, PSG parallel, we have the 2 stars facing off in a major international tournament final at the end, a la Messi and Mbappe in the World Cup.
It all comes up PSG. And once again, the French team.
And yeah, fuck France.
But do they make Mikkel Hansen wear traditional Middle Eastern garb afterwards, like they did with Messi, in a really weird and uncomfortable scene?
We've established very minimal blood money.
He does have the long hair and he wears a headband, but like that's just his natural thing. Like nothing like that. We're good. Going forward, because again, we've already PSG, spoiler alert, they continue to lose. They continue to get very close and to lose. So we're just going to focus on the Danish national team. In 2019, Denmark hosts the World Championship, and they basically just steamroll their way to gold, playing in front of their home fans. Mikkel Hansen scores 72 goals across the entire tournament and is named MVP. 72 goals in about 8 or 9 games. Pretty unreal.
That's almost too many goals.
There's no such thing.
Because it could have been 69 goals.
That's true. He did the 3 goals we could have afforded to score one, couple less in the group stage maybe. But coming off of that victory, Michael gets married to his longtime girlfriend Stephanie. They've had 2 kids together since, so we'll keep an eye on the future generation of Danish handball with Eddie Max, the elder, born in 2019, and Vince, the most recently born in 2021. Also in 2021, we had those Olympic Games, the 2020 Olympic Games in 2021 in Tokyo. This time, Denmark enters as a slight favorite over France, which is slightly owing to the fact that the World Championship, which was played just 3 months prior, Denmark had beat France in that final. We do get the rematch again in 2021 in Tokyo. And in the final, our boy Mikkel Hansen leads all scorers with 9 goals, but the rest of his team lets him down as France reclaims the gold with a 25-23 victory. However,
boo, fuck France.
We do hate France, but what we do love is that Mikkel Hansen scored 61 goals in those Olympics, which set a new record for goal scoring in the single Olympics. And it brought his career Olympic total to 165 goals, which is also the career record for goals scored at the Olympics. In 2022, after those 10 years together, Mikkel Hansen and Nikola Karabtic do separate from their PSG partnership. Hansen would go back to Denmark, and he would play for Aalborg Handbold. In his first year back, they finish second. So going into the 2023 off-season for the domestic league, we have the 2023 World Championships. Just as it was the previous year, we have France and Denmark in the final. Spoiler alert. And this time it is Denmark behind just one goal from Mikkel Hansen, as France made it their entire defensive game plan to shut him out. He had been averaging 6 goals a game for the tournament, still very much the same dominant player he's always been. The French sell out to try to stop him, and as a consequence of that, his teammates do pick up the slack, and Denmark wins gold 34-29. For the 2023-24 regular season, we're about halfway through it when Mikkel Hansen announced that it would be his final season professionally. With that as the inspiration, they do go on and they win the Danish title. And as a pretty long underdog in the Champions League, they do make a miracle run. And they get all the way to the final, where they face off against the first team that he ever left Denmark for, Barcelona, in the final. It is his final game professionally. He scores a game-high 8 goals. And Aalborg falls 31-30 to Barcelona in his final professional game. The Champions League title that had eluded him his entire career was
Continues to.
so nearly in his grasp. And in his last professional game, he just falls short.
This happened a month ago.
Incredibly recently.
And he's not playing in the Olympics in 2 weeks?
And that is setting the stage for my grand conclusion, because this is all a pitch to recruit everybody to be a fan of the Denmark national team for the farewell tour of Mikkel Hansen.
Fucking sold, dude. Let's go down. I'm already going France in basketball. I'm just going to start picking countries, man.
Hop aboard the Denmark train for handball. France for basketball. Yes, would love to see Wemby do great. Nick Batum, still love you. Best one-year acquisition that we've ever had. But in handball, fuck France. Go Denmark. It is the swan song of the potential GOAT of all time for handball. And if Mikkel Hansen in this final tournament can lead Denmark to one more gold, I think it becomes indisputable. And maybe Mikkel Hansen is too good to Guy for this week, and that's absolutely fine. But I am glad to have been able to find some time to dedicate to honoring one of the greatest players of sport in the history of the world. And when he gets the gold, the indisputable GOAT of handball, Mikkel Hansen.
I do like that. Also, I went to the European Handball Federation Champions League Wikipedia page. I wanted to see what countries participate in this. And the way it works is that each country that's in the top 9 of their rankings gets their league champion into the Champions League. They also allow everyone in the top 9 to apply for one wild card, where they might just decide to let you in. Anyone else gets to have their league champion apply for a wild card, and they might take you. So, the champion of 10th ranked Romania? Nope. 12th ranked Norway? Sure. 14th ranked Croatia? Sure. 13th ranked Ukraine? No. And then it goes down to Finland and Switzerland tied for 18th, and that just has everyone else 0 points. Which means that 19 countries play handball, and nobody else has any ranking points or counts at all, which I very much enjoy, because the countries in that top 9 are very funny. It's Spain, Germany, France, Hungary, Denmark, Poland, Portugal, North Macedonia, and Slovenia.
Hell yeah, North Macedonia.
We will hopefully all be cheering them on. Xavier, I am so thoroughly affected by your energy about handball there. I want to see what energy it is that you are bringing to some other sport we've never discussed before. Would you please tell us about your guy this week?
All right. So, who here knows what dressage is?
So I know it's on a horse. I think it's just fancy horse choreography, right?
Yes, pretty much. Dressage is one of the three main equestrian disciplines at high-level competition, along with show jumping and eventing, which is just like show jumping, dressage, and cross-country. It essentially just means, like, the literal translation is just training. And the International Federation for Equestrian Sports, the FEI, describes it as, quote, the ultimate expression of horse training and elegance, and compares it to ballet. The best way I can describe it is doing a dance routine on a horse in a 20 meter by 60 meter arena.
It's a horse form routine.
And you essentially need the horse to memorize the routine, because the less explicit instructions the rider gives the horse, the better. Somewhat similar to ice skating, there's a list of predetermined movements that need to be included somewhere in the program. Otherwise, you lose points. And like, you're scored on doing those movements, and then also the artistic nature of your performance. So very similar to ice skating in that sense. In the Olympics, there are 7 judges who score routines, and they're all set up at different spots around the arena. The arena is broken into blocks that are lettered, and the judge is given the designation of the letter of the block where they're stationed at. So every part of the arena is covered, and they can keep an eye on you from everywhere. Every movement is scored out of 10, and then for each judge, the maximum possible points obtainable is then calculated by dividing the total that was obtained minus any error, and then multiplying by 100 and rounding to 2 decimals. For Olympic competitions that have more than one judge, the scores for every judge are then put together and averaged. Just so you have some context on scoring, a good gauge is that at whatever level you're competing at, 65 to 70 is considered good, with over 70 being excellent. So there's different levels of competition, and if you're getting constantly 65 to 70 or higher, that's when you should move up to the next level. When we get to the Olympics, 65 or above is, lower half Olympic level. Those are the ones that usually don't progress past like the qualifying round. 75 and above is upper tier Olympic level, so those are the ones that'll make it to the final day. 80 and above is elite, and then 90 and above is the absolute best of the best. It's not surprising to not see anyone score that high, or at most one person score that high. So if you're getting into the 80s, you're a star. There's also team dressage, which is done in teams of 3 or 4, depending on the year. They've kind of switched things up over the years, and it's longer with more required movements. They've also changed the scoring to this recently. You essentially get scored out of a possible 400 points. Then they add up all 7 judges' scores instead of averaging them, which can be a bit annoying because if I talk about the 2016 Olympics, the winning score for team dressage was an 81.936. And for 2020, the winning score was 8,178. But I'll get to that a little later. With that background covered, it's time to talk about my guy for today, Steffen Peters.
I was really hoping it was going to be a horse.
It's not a horse because there are a lot of horses I need to talk about because, as you might expect, the rider's career is substantially longer than horse careers.
Heartless bastards. Heartless bastards.
No, they love the horse. These horses get lots of props. We'll get into it because I also at one point almost wanted to talk about a different equestrian rider, Philip Dutton, who lives in West Grove, and his farm is literally 10 minutes from Diaz's house. But I kind of like Steffen Peters better, so I'm going to just go into him now.
There's one other horse thing that I need to say about my area. I wonder if that guy knows Roy and Gretchen Jackson, because they were Barbaros owners, and Barbaros owners were also from West Grove. That's probably going to be like the most famous thing I'll ever be able to say about West Grove. I can't imagine anything bigger ever coming from us than, hey, remember the horse that was going to win the Triple Crown and then tragically broke its legs? Yeah, he's from my town.
Well, there's another Olympian who's essentially from there who is at the Olympics for equestrian this year. His name is Boyd Martin. I think his farm is in Cochranville. But from what I've learned, your area is a hotbed for Olympic equestrians, Diaz.
Yeah, that explains how we had so many horse girls in high school, man. It really makes sense.
Back to Steffen Peters. So, Steffen Peters was born September 18th, 1964 in Wessel, Germany, which is about an hour northwest of Dortmund. He began horseback riding at the age of 7. For those who don't know, Germany is a massive equestrian hotbed. A lot of the best equestrian riders in the world are Germans. Some of the biggest international competitions in the world are held in Germany. It's really like the place, especially right now, one of the best, if not the best, current equestrian rider in the world, Isabel Wirth, is also German, and she's pretty much won everything for the past 20 years. So Germany, very big for equestrian. He begins horseback riding at age of 7, eventually starts competing in weekend dressage shows, and by 15, he was competing in European competitions in Belgium and Denmark. When he was 16, he got his first horse of his own, Udon, as a gift from his father. Udon, phenomenal name for a horse. I do love that. In 1984, he comes to America to do summer training in San Diego, and he really likes America. But he does have to go back to Germany the next year for mandatory military service. At this point, Germany did have required conscription, so he has to go back for a year. But he liked America a lot. Once he gets out of the military, he immediately flies back to America, brings Udon, and just stays full-time. By 1989, he gets his green card, then gets married to an American, his wife Shannon, and in 1991, he opens his own barn and gets his first sponsor. He is aiming for those 92 Olympics in Barcelona. Problem is, his citizenship papers do not get finalized in time for the U.S. Olympic trials because there's a mandatory 3-year waiting period after getting his green card. And he was essentially like 2 months too late in getting his green card. So he does not get his citizenship until a couple months after the Barcelona Olympics.
If Republicans actually cared about America, I would just point out that, like, this is not the first time that immigration paperwork has held up someone for competing for America in the Olympics before on this show.
I read an article from the LA Times in June of 1992. Talked to like his local congressman who like wrote to the government. But the congressman said, yeah, around Olympic time, we get this all the time in a bunch of different sports. There's always people we want to naturalize to play in the Olympics. So it's not even like a rare case that we could really escalate. So it does happen fairly often. You know, he doesn't get to compete in the Olympics, but he does get to become an American, which he was very happy about. He said, quote, "The whole idea of being so patriotic, of feeling so close to one's country makes a difference. There are not too many other countries where the people are so patriotic. I really enjoy this about America." And I, too, wonder about being patriotic in 1992 America, right after the Summer Olympics, a time that I was not yet alive for. It's okay, because there's no such citizenship issue in 1996, and Peters gets named to the Olympic equestrian team for dressage with a now 18-year-old Udon, which is essentially considered geriatric for a horse. 18 to 20 is geriatric. High-level sport, the prime seems to be between 10 to 15 or so, but he loves Udon and wants to compete with Udon. In the individual competition, Peters and Udon finished 13th in the Grand Prix test with the 67.8, and they advanced as one of the top 25 out of 48 competitors. In the second qualifier, with first-round scores carrying over, they score a 67.63. So pretty consistent between 67.8 and 67.63 for combined 135.43, which unfortunately was 0.45 points behind the 14th place cutoff. So they do not make the finals and do finish 15th overall for the event. But there is still the 4-person team event. And Peters and Udon score 1,695 points, which was third on the U.S. team.
I feel like I need an important team event clarification. Is this 4 horses doing 4 individual routines? Or is
Yes.
this... Okay, so we don't have 4 horses
We do not have
doing
4
a synchronized dance routine.
There's not enough space.
I
on
had fully
arena
just assumed it was that the first time, and the way you phrased it this time, I felt my heart starting to break, and I just.
I'm sorry,
confirm.
James. No,
I was thinking of like horse show choir up here, man.
That would be cool. It'd be
so much better.
I don't think it would be safe, but maybe we can convince them to make a
Oh,
change.
dancing on one horse is so safe.
Dance on 4 horses. We'll write to the U.S. Equestrian Federation right after this. I'm sure they don't get that many emails from people that aren't that aren't doing stuff like this, so maybe they'll listen.
Invent a sport and then be the best at it. It's the American way.
We haven't invented a new sport in a while.
Synchronized
we should do that again.
dressage. But first, we must learn more about real dressage, and I have derailed this conversation.
Yeah, it's all right, because the combined team score for the USA team was more than enough to finish 3rd by over 250 points over France, because fuck France, which gave the US and Peters and Udon a bronze medal on home soil. He had to wait. He had to wait a long time to go, but they do get an Olympic medal.
3rd place champions.
After the Olympics, Udon, it is time for him to retire, so Peters has to switch to a younger horse, and was unable to find a good fit for a while, until he started riding a horse named Floriano. Peters and Floriano were alternates for the 2004 Athens Games, but didn't end up competing. And this is after having missed 2000 altogether because he just could not find a good partner. But Peters and Floriano would come back at the 2006 World Equestrian Games in Aachen, Germany, where they would finish 4th in individual special dressage, which is one of the 2 individual disciplines, and get bronze in the team event, another 3rd place championship. Peters gets back to the Olympics in 2008, which, interestingly enough, was not held in Beijing. Due to horse quarantine rules, they had to do the equestrian events in Hong Kong, which, I don't know if you know, is very far from Beijing.
Also sounds like a diplomatic nightmare.
I mean, not in 2008. At least 2008 it was okay, but it wouldn't be great right now. This time, he was riding a new horse named Ravel. In the individual event, they come up agonizingly short of the podium, finishing 0.305 points behind 3rd place. However, it looked like he was at least going to carry Team USA to the podium in the team event. He put up a really strong score, but teammate Courtney King got the team DQ'd because her horse tested positive for a banned substance. So the USA
They're doping the horses? I guess you can't really dope the riders in dressage.
So they did get disqualified from the team competition in 2008. Damn you, Courtney King. But Peters and Ravel didn't let this disappointment get them down because they really kick on after this. In 2009, they win the dressage competition at the CHIO Aachen, the biggest equestrian sporting event in the world. Peters was the first and to this day only American to ever win this competition. This is a massive deal. They then go on to win the 2008-2009 Dressage World Cup final, which is essentially like the league of dressage. And the United States Equestrian Federation names Peters the Equestrian of the Year, and Ravel is the Horse of the Year. See, they do recognize both of them, James. Don't worry.
I would love to be in the discussion room when they're like discussing the nuances of like, no, Steffen Peters was carried. Like, okay, like yeah, they're all literally carried. No, but Peters knew how to get the best out of a horse on its worst day. Like,
I would be very interested
what
to
did they
see
look
the talking head. Yeah, the like cognoscenti in the weeks leading up to it, how they parse those candidates.
I bet it's a very funny discussion. The Chronicle of the Horse, which is a real publication, called Peters a, quote, natural athlete with a balanced seat and an inherent understanding of the horse. He's calm under pressure and has a reputation for having ice water in his veins. I would love nothing more than to have a publication called the Chronicle of the Horse put out a glowing, like, quote, about my skills, because I think that'd be the funniest thing to frame and have somewhere in my house.
I just love to be able to cite that in a bibliography.
It is very good. In the 2011 Pan Am Games, Peters actually rides a different horse called Weltino's Magic and wins the gold at both individual and team dressage. So now that we don't have the Germans competing, Peters is the best. So you know what? He'll take those golds. Peters is back with Ravel for the 2012 Olympics. This time, they are unable to medal. Ravel is getting up there in years, and he does retire pretty much immediately after the Olympics, and immediately gets inducted into the United States Dressage Federation Hall of Fame. So we have a Hall of Fame horse here. Not a Hall of Fame rider, but there is a Hall of Fame horse in Ravel. But with Ravel's retirement, Peters yet again needs to find the new horse. And as we know, this is very difficult. Pretty soon after, he does switch to a horse named Legolas. And riding
Fake.
Legolas...
Fake! I know it's not, but like, come the fuck on, dude.
Riding Legolas, Peters defends his Pan Am individual and team golds in 2015. And in 2016, he gets back to the Olympic Games. 20 years after his first Olympic medal, Peters gets back on the podium in the team competition, getting another bronze medal in team dressage with Team USA. 20 years apart, we have another third-place championship.
There's a Legolas Fellowship of the Olympic Ring joke somewhere in here. I'm just going to say that and then let you make your own punchline, but that setup is there somewhere.
So after the Olympics, Legolas does also retire. So now Peters, in his 50s, is looking for a fifth long-term partner. And in 2018, he starts competing with Supan Kaspar, who is otherwise known as Mopsy, the rave horse.
Good old Mopsy.
A 50-year-old guy on his fifth long-term relationship getting into someone that does raves. I've heard this story before.
Riding Mopsy, Peters gets his first World Equestrian Game silver in the team dressage competition at the 2018 Games. The pair then qualifies for the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Peters and Mopsy do earn Peters' first ever Olympic silver medal. He gets a silver this time in the team dressage 25 years after his first attempt, as Team USA finishes second to Germany. But Peters and Mopsy are the stars of the show in the individual competition. Even though they do not win, they did an EDM routine that went viral and was talked about by none other than Snoop Dogg, who recently did an interview about the Olympics, and the thing he wanted to do the most was meet Mopsy. I gotta go meet him, you know what I'm saying? And let him know I'm a big fan. You know, the way you do when you meet your favorite person.
I really enjoy Snoop Dogg's just general fandom. Like, when he was doing the commentary on that baseball game for the Reds, I forget who they were playing, but he saw Ellie De La Cruz make just an insane throw from short to first and was just gobsmacked by it openly while talking. And man, Snoop always had to enjoy life.
And I'm going to request that the two of you watch at least 30 seconds of the clip about this routine.
Let's see some dressage.
You got flow. That was the one that Snoop Dogg said he was doing the Crip Walk, right?
Yes, Snoop Dogg did say that Mopsy was doing the Crip Walk. That is a thing that happened.
How much can the horse understand the beat? Like, does the horse actually know what a beat is?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I mean, this horse has rhythm. Like, it can groove.
He definitely can groove, Mopsy the rave horse. And the good news for Snoop is that Snoop is going to meet Mopsy, as Peters and Mopsy will be at the 2024 Olympics as well, just like Mikkel Hansen. Possibly the last dance for Steffen Peters, as the 59-year-old did make the dressage team and is the oldest American at the Olympics since art competitors in 1936, back when the Olympics did have arts as well as sports, and the oldest sportsman competing since Walter Winans, who was an Olympic champion shooter in Stockholm in 1912. So, not only, dear listener, should you watch the handball tournament this year, watch dressage, because you're going to get to see the Rave Horse ridden by 6-time Olympian Steffen Peters and possibly Snoop Dogg in the audience vibing out to the routine. We have not talked about equestrian ever on this podcast. I did not know much about it beforehand, but I did like watching horses essentially dance and people who teach the horses to dance, and it was very fun to me, even more so than just the show jumping and stuff like that. So very much appreciate guys who are able to, one, ride a horse, because I do not think I could ride a horse, but also take like 6 different horses to the Olympics and do pretty well with all of them. And I'm hoping that Steffen Peters and Mopsy can maybe at least get another third-place championship this summer. But who knows? Maybe this is the year the Germans go down and they can bring home the gold to America, because let's go USA. The only times I really say it are during the Olympics, because fuck all of those other countries. But there's enough about horses, I think, for this moment. Unless James is really going to surprise me.
There are some horses. We're not doing a horse event, but like there are some horses.
Oh my god.
I have a non-zero amount of horses. I'll start by saying I'm not going to lie. Last week hurt. There have been some tough losses this year. There have been some robberies, in my opinion, but Vladi over Mike hurt. And we really we went back to the locker room. We took some time at the drawing board. We decided over here for Team James to go back to our strengths, which is, I don't mean this as a slight against either of you. This is merely commenting on one of my strengths rather than anyone else's weaknesses. I think I'm the best historian here.
I mean, that is
it's
kind
your
of
job.
what you're paid professionally to do.
Yeah. No. It's precisely. And I need to lean into those strengths is what I'm saying. So I have not done what you guys have done, which is essentially throw me pity votes by getting a bunch of people that are still about to compete in the Olympics that are going on this year. I have gone much further back. I have gone into the annals of history. Hey, Xavier, do you want to guess who I'm talking about?
Are you talking about Walter Winans?
I'm talking about Walter Winans. Possibly the most foolproof candidate yet. I want to ask you guys a favor before we start this. Please do not Google Walter Winans. Please do not look up anything else.
My hands are here.
Walter Winans is insane. But it makes sense because Walter Winans comes from an insane family. We got to talk about the Winans family for just a second. It's an old American family. Old American family. So much so that by the time that his grandpa, Ross Winans, is born in New Jersey in 1796, they're already wealthy horse breeders, top of the upper class, super, super highfalutin. Ross is going to say, these horses, they're all right. Well, what if they were iron? That's right. He's going to go down to Baltimore, the newly formed Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, and he's going to get super into designing trains and locomotives, and also cigar boats, tiny little kind of cigar or dart-shaped boats that also made him a lot of money. I'm not entirely sure why. I looked at the design. A submarine that stays on top of the water without going under. Anyway, makes a lot of money and sets up his son, the father of Walter, William Lewis Winans, who was born in Baltimore. He sets him up really well. And then William Lewis goes and becomes even more obscenely wealthy because he's got all this railroad experience from the family. And Tsar Nicholas I is looking for people to build a railroad in Russia. So he's involved with this. Also, distant through marriage, family member George Washington Whistler, father of painter James Whistler. That means a lot to people who enjoy art. They are both here building this railroad in St. Petersburg. And William Lewis Winans has brought his wife along, Maria Anne de la Rue. So she's there in St. Petersburg. And that is where, on April 5th, 1852, she gives birth to Walter W. Winans. At this time, like I said, he's coming from a whole lot of money, our boy Walter. His dad, I was able to get one write-up in 1901 saying by that point he was somewhere in the $12.5 to $20 million range in terms of net worth. That is about $450 to $750 million today.
This has got to be so hard for you, James. It's rich people, obscenely wealthy people, which you hate, and Baltimore, which you love.
Here's the thing. This guy at least has fun with his money. He spends his money and seems to generally enjoy it. And I do hate that nowadays we have to live with a class of like horrible robber baron overlords who don't even seem to enjoy being fucking rich. Like, at least have fun with it. Anyway, he's growing up with his one brother, who dad is William Lewis. His brother is Lewis William. The two of them are growing up there in Russia. Eventually, when Walter is 18, he pledges his like U.S. loyalty pledge at the U.S. embassy there, and then actually moves to England to a family estate that they have, Surrendon Park. It's in Kent near Brighton. They're on the coast of England. And Walter Winans, I mean, he settles into the life of someone who does not need to work. The family legacy of horse breeding does continue. He and Lewis are both into it, both breeding and racing. Harness racing in particular. These are basically like the buggies that'll trail behind them. Walter will later develop a better form of these that is, quote, ideal for ladies. I couldn't get exactly what about it made it ideal for ladies, but many descriptions from the time describe it as ideal for ladies.
Which means they probably made it pink or put flowers on it or something and did not change anything else.
Well, no, pink is still very manly at this time. Probably is just like extra padded or something because of their weak constitution. I want to say, for the record, that is not my actual feeling. It is obviously like the feeling of the times. Anyway.
Actually, no, James believes in the medical diagnosis of hysteria and weak constitution.
I do think that women should get prescribed sex toys if they want them. I'm all for that. Like, I do not mind that being a stance that we take here. Or anyone that wants sex toys. Your doctor should be able to give those to you. Fuck it. Anyway, speaking of phallic things, he gets into shooting. And by all accounts, he is magnificent at it. Particularly, he is like very into hunting, the classic British big game kind of hunting. And with his incredible wealth, he rents out 250,000 acres in the Scottish Highlands. Rather, he rents out the hunting and shooting rights for it. And that becomes very important because this is just a fun little detour into Scottish law for a moment. In 84, Muradach MacRae is this guy who is grazing a lamb in these lands. And it is ancestral Clan MacRae lands. But it is something that he, our friend Walter Winans, has the hunting and shooting rights for. He sues this guy when he comes across him in the land and fails. And this failed prosecution is immensely important to the fact that almost all green open space in the UK you can just walk through. You have the right to ramble. Very, very important, the loss that Walter Winans takes here. Don't feel bad for him, though, because he has a lot of wins during this time. He's basically become the greatest shooter in all of Britain. At one point running off 12 national championships consecutively in revolver, having patented the particular model of revolver that he uses.
Wait. Hold on.
Yes.
So he's winning a national championship with a gun he invented.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so he better
just make guns, man.
He better be winning at that point.
If other people could make a better gun than Walter, they would come out with it. He can make the best gun.
Like Diaz said earlier, it is a uniquely American thing, even for this fairly American person. The American blood is still there of inventing something that he can be the best at.
It's unstoppable. It's deep within us. Real quick, I should mention, he is married by this point. He has married Caroline Rowland in October of 81 there in Brighton. He is incredibly rich. He has dozens of award-winning horses. He's a national champion shooter. Speaks 5 languages. He is like a caricature of a supremely rich, talented dilettante. Almost as if in answer to the question, what would he do next? More or less on a whim. He goes to the 1908 Olympics to compete. The 1908 Olympics are already a little bit weird because they were going to be in Rome, and then Mount Vesuvius erupted in 1906. And that made that pretty impossible. So they very quickly pivot to London because London had a lot of infrastructure already set up. There was going to be this Franco-British exposition running for about a 6-month period. And so they're like, cool, bet. Why don't we just line up the Olympics with that? And so they line up the Olympics to start on April 27th and end on Halloween. They go for 187 days, the entire extent of this expo. Unsurprisingly, this is the longest Olympic Games in Olympic history.
Is that when the Crystal Palace was around?
Yes, exactly. It is built for this. Hey, editor's note, because I have worked so hard to make this one as historically accurate as possible, I do need to mention that I am wrong here. The Crystal Palace was for the 1851 World Exposition that was held in London. This one here in 1908 is going to take place in a complex in the Hyde Park area, part of a series of world expositions referred to sometimes as the White City Expositions, including this, Paris, and Chicago as well in that rough time. Anyway, it's a different one. Crystal Palace is still around then, but these are different expositions. And with all of that time to fill here in this fourth Olympiad, they have some filler. There's some weird events that they're kind of notorious for in these. And Winans is making his debut at the same Olympiad that his event is debuting. Is men's double shot running deer 100 meters. What does that mean, you ask? Glad you all are asking such astute questions today. So there's a little deer-shaped target. They are 100 meters away from it. That is the distance from the track that this target runs on. This is a moving target, and it will go across the 75-meter track that is 100 meters away from them at a speed of about 40 miles an hour 10 times. Get 10 rounds of this. 2 shots every time, hence the double shot. And that's it. Just get the best score, shooting this tiny little moving deer guy. All countries were allowed to send up to 12 competitors. And the reason there's that big cap is another thing that happens with the 1908 Olympics, which is Great Britain is massively overrepresented in everything. They do have 10 of the 15 contestants in this event. France and Sweden both send 2, but it is the sole American, Walter W. Winans, who does capture the gold in this with the high score, becoming the first ever gold medalist in men's double shot running deer 100 meter, an event I will point out we have not discussed here before. That takes place July 9th and 10th that year. He is not done shooting his shot on the international stage here in London. There is another new event, we'll say. This is one that will only exist at the 1908 Olympics in the form that it does, and that's competitive pistol dueling.
Unreal. I mean,
Does he kill someone?
I'm just going to give you this write-up from an April 27th copy of the Lincoln, Nebraska Lincoln Journal-Star, where Walter is talking about how excited he is. And he goes greatly into detail about basically how this is going to run, because they're going to be doing real duels just with wax bullets. So, it's going to be fine. All of the same stuff, walking out the paces, having seconds, just wax bullets.
Could that still kill somebody?
The quote, "There will be just enough risk in these duels to make them exciting, though not really dangerous. A little too heavy a charge of powder might cause the bullet to penetrate slightly, and no doubt most of the duels will protect their persons. I do not think I shall wear any protection myself, however, as I do not want to make too large a target."
What a madman.
I should mention, they don't get full participation in this. The United States, Great Britain, and France do send some people to compete in this. We do not have results because the only international medals that were ever awarded for competitive pistol dueling, they were in this weird 1906 games called the Intercalated Games. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's like the 3.5 Olympiad. It doesn't really count, but it was run by all the same people, and they were just going to start doing them in off years. Anyway, some people got medals there. No one gets medals here because this is actually the last games without official demonstration sports. This was just taking place at the larger expo in the Olympic fencing arena, but I will acknowledge it was not an official Olympic discipline in this particular games. However, he does compete in pistol dueling here during the larger expo. It's not even the only 1908 non-Olympic competition that he's in, because, going back to the horses, he and Lewis are part of a coterie of Americans that capture the majority of blue ribbons at what we would now refer to as the Second London International Horse Show. It was just an international horse show at the time. It was held at Olympia Park that year. I thought initially when I was reading up on this that it would be related to the Olympics. No, that just happens to be the name of the park. But King Edward VII is on hand to see this. It's very impressive. So between the horse show, the pistol dueling expo, and his gold medal, 1908 is a very big year for our boy Walter W. Winans. 1910 is also going to be a very big year. We have a national horse show. The nation, this time, is the United States. It's being held at MSG. Stepping off a cruise liner here into New York is 58-year-old Walter Winans, who is for the very first time in his entire life setting foot onto American soil. That's right, this man who has represented the U.S. in the Olympics, winning the country a gold medal, is now at the age of 58 for the first time ever actually living for a few weeks in the United States. This is all just laughing.
Just laughing.
He's wild.
This man is too rich. He's been able to do everything he's ever wanted in life because he's too rich.
He's not the richest person in the world. He is the toast of the town and gets to host one of the richest people in the world. John D. Rockefeller is the personal guest at his luxury box during the National Horse Show, as he and his brother just win blue ribbon after blue ribbon. They are, like, I found articles about this. I mean, there was one mentioned earlier from Nebraska, like, all across the country, when Walter Winans does wild shit, newspapers write about it because he's just the fascinating, crazy rich guy. In fact, the thing that I got about John D. Rockefeller then later even goes into the, like, social cues that one woman was cold shouldering another rich woman at these luxury seats. The rags and the tabloids are not anything new. Thing that I always remember when I do newspaper research. The Winans, they're winning ribbons. They're rubbing elbows. They're purchasing other champion horses to continue this breeding operation. Winans has some talent in creating life, sure. He's much, much better, though, at snuffing it out. Let's go back to that shooting for a little bit. An article in the Hartford Courant from this year. Let's hear a guess. By this point in his life, he's 58 years old. This newspaper cites him with how many killed boars and stags? How many boars and stags has he killed?
How the hell am I supposed to have any form of frame of reference for that, James?
It's
I'll say 5,000 because he's
2,000.
a fucking mass murderer.
2,000. He's not quite as much of a mass murderer as you guys think. Many, like, award-winning trophy head displays. And, you know, with all of this information in his hand, it's only natural he starts to put some books out. I'm going to present you with a selected bibliography. All of these are available in their entirety at the Library of Congress's website. In 1901, we have his first book, The Art of Revolver Shooting. Then we have his next book, Hints on Revolver Shooting. Then Practical Rifle Shooting, The Sporting Rifle, Art of Revolver Shooting, Revised Edition, Shooting for Ladies, Pistolen und Revolverschießen, that is a German translation of The Art of Revolver Shooting, Automatic Pistol Shooting, The Modern Pistol and How to Shoot It. I think, for the record, that one, that's clearly a double album. You could have split that into two. That's great value for your buck. Finally, How to Handle a Revolver. He has some writings as well about animals, deer breeding for fine heads, animal sculpture, and he's got How to Drive a Trotter, one of those horses for buggies. But mostly, he's not only written the book on shooting, he's written several books on shooting.
Much like Ted Kempsky and the Wing T offense.
Very fair. Ted Kempsky has indeed done that. I look forward to speaking about Ted Kempsky at some point again in the near future. He is a busy guy, our friend Walter W. Winans. However, he is not too busy for a return to the Olympic Games. After all, Xavier mentioned Stockholm earlier, not 1908. He returns Stockholm. It is a team version of his previous event. This is the men's 100-meter team running deer single shot. Just stupid. His score of 39 is the highest for the United States. It is tied for second highest in the gold medal round. Unfortunately, the other 39 and the number one score are both on Sweden. So he settles for a silver. Should point out, the silver medal winning team. We have Walter W. Winans, whose middle name, by the way, is William, for his father. The other three members, William Luschner, William Libby, and William McDonnell.
Nah, fuck that. That's too many W's.
Too many bills!
Too many W's to not take the actual dub. If you're gonna do that, you have to win the whole thing.
Well, don't worry, because there is another gold medal for Walter W. Winans at these Olympic Games. And this is, once again, in a debut contest, much as his 1908 gold medal will. He gets the 1912 gold medal in sculpture. Because yes, there were arts being debuted at the Olympics. at this time, Xavier. Thank you for prefacing that a little bit earlier.
I really set you up for this one, didn't I?
It was perfect. And when you said it, I had to restrain myself a little bit.
I mean, let me say for the record, let's bring the arts back to the Olympics, because like I feel like society, as a former jock / dude bro, I feel culture has gone too far that way, and I think if we bring the arts back to the Olympics, it's going to bring some of those more right brains people back into the fold a little bit more.
Well, and like arts have always been part of the Olympics, going way back to the ancient Olympics. It had always had new displays of like recently written dramas and comedies. There were sculptures put on display. Like this was a part of that Olympic heritage. And Pierre de Coubertin, the father of the modern Olympic movement, always wanted to include that. He also knew that like, hey, I got to get people into it with the sports first. Then I can sick the arts on them. But let's get a couple years of sports first. Finally, though, in 1912, his vision of a complete Olympics is realized with 5 artistic events: architecture, literature, music, painting, and sculpture. And I should say real quick, Walter W. Winans, he had come by his art, honestly. He has had an interest in sculpture from a very young age. He has an interest in painting from a very young age. One other artistic interest that I will just briefly touch on from another little like celeb blurb of his from the Alma Signal in Kansas. This described him as much interested in tattooing, and a design on his arm is said to be the most beautiful piece of tattooing ever done. Literally the most fascinating individual to have ever existed, as he here, at the age of 60, winning the first ever Olympic gold medal in sculpture for his small bronze statuette, An American Trotter. It's a very classic, kind of like pastoral, photorealistic American trotter horse with a buggy, like the ones he has raced in so many different harness races right behind it. It's very parochial, very classic. I will say, like, it is insanely funny to me that, like, this pastoral image is what people were identifying here. This, like, idealized Western genre that he'd been working on previously. This ties into like stuff like Bronco Buster. If you're one of our listeners from the Philly area, that is a piece off Kelly Drive. It's very similar to that. And all of that stuff's about to get like thrown out the fucking window because we're actually moving into modern art here with 1912. This is when Cubism is just getting off the ground. We're going to have the Armory show next year. I can see everyone's eyes glazing over, so we're going to move past the art history lesson now. But like, basically, if we cared about American Trotter, we will look back the way we look back now on Crash winning Best Picture.
James, real quick, can I talk about the last ever time they had art at the Olympics, the 1948 Olympics, just for a minute?
Sure. I'll pick up right after 1948. Go for it.
I'm looking at the categories. They had architectural design, town planning, lyric works, dramatic works, epic works, vocal, instrumental and chamber, choral and orchestral, oils and watercolors, engravings and etchings, applied arts and crafts, statues, reliefs,
and applied arts and crafts. Hell yes.
And medals and plaques. And I'm glad you said applied arts and crafts, because one of the things about the Arts Olympics is the judges could decide if nobody wins.
Yeah, they could just not give out a gold medal. It's great.
So for applied arts and crafts that year, no one won the gold medal. The silver medal was won by Alex Digelman of Switzerland for the World Championship for Cycling Poster. The bronze medal that year was won by Alex Digelman of Switzerland for the World Championship of Ice Hockey Poster. The man won the silver and the bronze for two different things, and nobody won the gold. They're like, you're good enough to get silver and bronze. Nobody's better than you, but your art is not good enough for a gold medal.
I love it. It's petty. Diaz, want to say I'm so thoroughly behind the movement to get them back in there. I should mention, while I can't find direct confirmation that this is the exact reason why it stopped at this time, that is, as Xavier mentioned, 1948, the last time that the arts made an appearance as a contested category at the Olympics, 1952 being the first games without them. 1952 is also the first games with Avery Brundage as IOC president. He is famously an enormous stickler about amateurism. That is going to be a huge thing. And the essential argument against the arts being contested is that these are professional artists. They're not amateurs. Very often was commercial works that were being put forward. And so while I don't have direct connecting of the dots, I have now just mentioned several dots to you. So I will leave you all to connect those in your heads as to why I believe that they petered out there. Though it should be mentioned, the Olympics continue to always have like massive art displays and exhibitions linked up with them. That is there. It's just not being juried and awarded as such. Walter is 60 for those 1912 games, and they do end up being his last, but he stays involved with sport up until the very, very end. Let's emphasize that very right there. August 12th, 1920, he is in a harness race at Parslows Park in England. Just as he is crossing the finish line, about to win, he appears to have, onlookers describe it as, a seizure in his harness, yells out, "Catch my horse!" and then falls to the ground, suffering an immediately fatal skull fracture. It is a tragedy. You know, he's old, but this definitely before his time. And I mean, who knows how many other books he had about shooting still in him left at this point. So I will say that the world mourns him. The world certainly, you know, eulogizes him a lot. There are obituaries, once again, nationwide about the American living in England that people have been so fascinated with for all these years. A lot of these obituaries also have one final nugget tucked away for the three of us. This is for us specifically, and it is what I will leave you with. And that is the name of the horse that our friend Walter W. Winans is riding the day that he falls and breaks his skull. And that horse's name is Henrietta Guy. So go ahead, say your stupid fake arguments for your two, and then let's wrap this shit up. Fuck you guys, I got this.
The only problem is that he's a rich man who did whatever he wanted his entire life. But James, you're passionate, and I don't want you to be
so many
sad.
rich men doing whatever they wanted. Let's give it to the guy, the only gold medalist in both sport and art. There is one other medalist in both. There's one other guy who got many golds in swimming, and then silver in architecture in a year where they did not award a gold medal. But he is still to this day the only gold medalist in both sport and art. An untouchable legacy. Let's get this shit in the hall.
That's
Diaz, do you want to kill James's hopes and dreams?
I mean, just like to talk, because look, it's gonna be Walter. I'm not gonna say it's not. I'm not saying it's not gonna be Walter. I just want to. While Mikkel Hansen is arguably the GOAT of handball, he does have those elements that we love to call back to. He is the son of a legendary father. He is the person that so often got almost to the mountaintop and just couldn't quite get there. While he does have the gold medals in international play, I think having the ghost that will forever haunt him that he never won a Champions League makes it a little more relatable. And Steffen Peters, love a naturalized citizen competing for the Americans. A lot of people getting pissed off about Joel Embiid. A lot of people getting pissed off about Joel Embiid.
more legitimately American than Walter Winans. Sorry.
No, but American. Like, at the end of the day, if they have citizenship in the United States, let them compete. Everybody getting pissed off about Joel Embiid, go fuck off, okay? Dude lives here. His kid's born here. He's raising his family here. Sounds like an American to me. But, yeah, the Walter Winans story, I mean, the only gold medalist in both sport and art at the Olympics.
In neither a sport nor an art discipline that we have discussed before here.
No, very true. Yeah, you did double on it. But does that make it a double negative?
Canceling out.
Too much. Too much uniqueness. But
I'll fight you. I'll fucking fight you. Yeah, I'm so tired of losing.
We're just asking questions. No, I'm all aboard Walter Winans.
Are you all aboard one of the trains built by his insane family?
Even if it is a very rich insanely wealthy white man who made his own competitions to win whatever he wanted into the hall. I am thinking of this as getting James into the hall and not Walter Winans. But James doesn't care because James will still get the dub.
I don't care which W it is. It could be the Walter, it could be the William, it could be the Winans. I just want to claim one of them, baby.
Well, more common preconceptions might suggest that WWW stands for World Wide Web. Perhaps it represents a 3-game winning streak. James is just looking to get on the board here. So we are not going to delay any W's any further. Raise the W. Oh, say, can you see? Walter W. Winans giving the dub. Welcome to the Hall of Guy. After you were felled by a guy, that really is pretty incredible. But none of the guys in here are going to kill you because you're already dead, so you can't be killed again.
We might start building a new trophy collection. You got a mighty fine looking head there, Walter. I got to say, no, I am thrilled to put that head on a plaque. Yeah, man, spite and rage will fuel a great presentation, won't it?
No, that was fantastic. And I mean, honestly, I'm glad Xavier kind of went the route I went to, where it was
both of you just kind of graciously bowed out, and one could take that as a pity vote, but again, I'll take what I can get.
Well, no, I'm not even saying it from that perspective. Like, my thought was just, look, we got these new Olympics coming up. We want to talk about some new exciting sports. Let's give the dear listener some guys to focus on in these 2024 Olympics. We have 2 guys still competing to focus on, going out on their swan song. And we're honored to induct a guy from 100 years ago that shot guns in very specific, coordinated ways to win
and
gold.
Killed entire bloodlines of boars.
2,000 boars and stags. And that was in 1910. He had another decade to go.
If he was still alive, we could send him to Arkansas to protect them from the feral hogs.
Hell yeah, brother. Dude, give him an automatic rifle, it's fucking over. This episode is over now. And we are wrapping up. It'll be a little bit of time before we record again. But as always, this recording has been made possible by producer Craig, the coders behind him, and our musical director, Don Ham, who we thank for that lovely theme music. But I know we thank more than that. That's right, it's you. Thank you so much for listening to this. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed this, that you will enjoy having some dogs in the race that are not just the United States Bowl Ralph Lauren polo outfits. And you can enjoy the Olympics, which will hopefully be in full swing by the time we all gather again next. If you want to chat with us before then, or see some more weird Olympic stuff that we find, you can always find all the information on how to keep up with that at bit.ly/rememberthatguy, all one word, all lowercase. We'll be back next week with RTG 100, and we will see if we have anything up our sleeves for that. Do you guys have anything else up your sleeves right now?
Fire Greg Berhalter.
Fire Greg Berhalter.
Welcome, Xavier. Welcome to the right side of the argument. I'm glad that you made it here.
Gotta crack some eggs. Yeah, there we go. I've been James.
I've been the very special guest Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And as a symbol of our patriotism, much like the Stephen Miller Band once sang, these Olympics, we're going to guy like an eagle.
Guy keeps on
I don't want James to explode, especially after having to fix an air conditioner earlier. I think if we didn't pick Walter Winans, James might never come back to this podcast, which is a problem because James edits this podcast and puts it up to all podcast feeds.
You have the passwords. You have access to all the passwords. I've told you where they are. Whether you remember where they are, that's a fair question. But I don't remember where they are. I
don't remember where they are. I don't think this podcast would happen.
You probably have open right now.
It's fine.